Okay, guys, so we have our 2 pieces of clay. We're going to be, in theory, you wedge these already. You want to make sure if you're making more of a symmetrical body that, you have even pieces of clay. I would say this is a good size for your salt and pepper shaker pinch pots. These are going to end up a little bit on the larger side. I don't think that's bad. Usually details are a lot easier to do when they are on the larger side. If you really want something that's more petite, that's okay. But you don't want to make it so small that the cork takes up the entire bottom of your project. So keep that in mind as well. I'm going to wet these a little bit because this clay is actually getting a little stiff. This bag, actually, guys, is the bag that I made when you guys got your first batch of clay. And because I've wrapped it up really well, I haven't had to rehydrate it at all. So you want to make sure that you check your clay occasionally. And if you have problems with it, you let me know so I can help you hydrate it, and possibly might need to get you some more. Don't throw out dry clay. If you have been, don't keep doing it. We can actually recycle all of that. Actually, you can recycle it and turn it into slip. So I have these wedged. I'm going to make them into, nice round balls. You're doing pinch pots. Now, just like with your jar that you're making, depending on the shape that you want will determine the shape of your pinch pot. So if I'm going for like a slightly rounder sausage-like shape, I'm going to make my pinch pot like an average type where it kind of goes straighter on the top. It doesn't go too wide. So I have my little ball here, push my thumb through. And you also have to keep in mind, these do not have to be perfect. We're going to smooth them out. But what you do need to keep in mind is you cannot make these super thick. And you also don't want to make them super thin, but definitely not super thick. Because when we have to put all these holes in them, you don't want to have to, poke through an inch layer of clay. And you want to make sure that you have enough space in these to actually put salt and pepper. Okay, so that's one little guy there. Put it upside down so I can keep that round base shape. Do this other little guy here. Now you might notice I might not look at my pinch pot while I'm doing it. That's because your sense of touch is so important. In fact, I think it's more important than your eyes. Your sense of touch can tell you if it's getting thinner, if it's bumpy, if it's rough, if it's too thick, too thin, how you can match it up, smooth it out. And you could just feel between your hands, the distance between them. Your brain will be like, it's close, it's thin. But that helps you to really keep things even. In fact, I looked at this one more, and I used touch with this one more. So you can see they're fairly similar. In fact, the one with touch is maybe a little smoother. Trust your brain, trust your fingers, trust your hands. 1 second. You got to keep that round on the end. And now we're ready to attach them together. With this particular project, normally in the double pinch I said you guys could stuff these. Don't stuff these because with the jar, you can take that stuffing out. With these, you can't. So normally in a sculpture, when you guys do a sculpture in the future, you can keep that newspaper paper towel inside. However, with this, it's not going to be easy to take out, and you don't want it to be in there when you have to put salt and pepper in there. It's going to be very hard to get out. So we want to avoid that. If you notice that your pinch pots are really flimsy, you can hair dry them a little before attaching them. This is also a quick refresher on how to score and slip because I've been getting some projects lately that have been falling apart or blowing up, even from my advanced kids, especially from the advanced kids, because they think they can kind of get away with it because they've done this before. But we have to make sure we do all the correct steps. So we want to score both parts that we're attaching. Score marks is not that. Score marks is not that. Score marks is not perfect little X's. I had a girl draw a grid pattern on her project. Don't do that. You want to make sure you're tapping. We are trying to make kind of like a texture like Velcro. So a lot of teachers actually have students either use toothbrushes or forks because it goes faster to do this. So if you want to do that at home, you can. I find the toothbrush a little tricky because it can kind of mush your clay and not make the marks that you need. But it might go faster than this. All I'm doing is tapping and crossing back over again. See? Yes, they look like there's crisscrosses in there, but there's so many other marks that they're not perfect. If you make some perfect lines, what happens is when you try to put these together and those lines don't perfectly match up, you're creating a bunch of small air bubbles. Don't do that. So we're ready to attach these together. But we're missing one thing. We scored both sides, and do we remember what we have to do as well? Shoot it out there for me, guys. Score both and add slip. Thank you. 1 second. Thank you, Ethan. So I'm going to make slip. That dry clay you guys have, you can actually put it in a jar and add a ton of water. And eventually it'll start getting really soft. And if you mush that together, you can have your own little container of slip at home. But all I did was take this clay, dip it in water, smush it in my hands. I can even take more. And I could either use my finger, look, I could just kind of scoop that up, and apply it to one of the sides. You do not need it on both, as demonstrated before. I'm going to take my hands and literally just wipe them on my apron. And I'm going to put these together. This is also kind of like a little mini review on double pinch if you guys are struggling with that with your jars. I got those together. Now we're going to add that baby coil. Key thing with coils, your clay must be really wet. If you don't make your coils wet, especially when you need to blend them, you'll damage your project. You'll be blending and you'll cave in this nice project you have going. So I dunked this in water and I'm mushing that all together. Make my coil real quick. Start from the center, work my way out. A coil on this is good to be about the thickness of your carving tool. Honestly, I didn't mean to do that. It's actually kind of amazing it matched up that well. So, score marks and slip. Now, the score mark and slip for this one, the score marks aren't as important because you're really going to blend this coil in. But it's best practice to still rough it up. You can see my lines are, more even here, but they do cross over and they are rough, and there's a lot of them. So, score both sides, slip one. Make my little mesh here. Scoop it up. Paste it around. You can even use a little more water on your hand like that to kind of get more on the fly. Okay, all right. Taking my coil, adding it around. Wherever it meets, break that off. Push that in, blend with thumbs. Okay, now another tip for you guys. If you're struggling to get rid of the illusion of that coil on the outside, first step that I usually do is I roll it. That's going to level that coil out a little bit. You don't want to push too hard, but this project right now is actually like a balloon, so it's going to keep forcing that shape back out, which is a good thing. So I have my rib. I'm going to use that up, down, sideways, left, right, around, over the river and through the woods. Make sure that you use this rib everywhere. That'll help to really get you a smooth shape there. This just reminded me of an idea as well for these. You guys can make like stuff for Easter. This was looking like an egg. Paint some nice detail on it. Maybe make an egg in a basket, or maybe make 2 eggs in a basket that holds them. There are a lot of ideas you guys can do. You can make baby chicks. You guys can make stuff for like St. Patty's Day. Whatever you want to do. It can be for spring, summer, fall, winter, whatever. There are a ton of different things you can do for this. So I have my double pinch together. Now, this is going to end up being a really fat animal. But if you want to kind of like roll it and force it to be more narrow, I'm just adding more firm pressure as I'm rolling this out. You can see it's starting to stretch a little. You might notice you'll do the stretch that you want and it'll just kind of like sink back. If you need to, you can actually poke a hole in this and patch it up after, but that releases the air so it's not shoving itself back out again, and you can now really control that shape more. But that means this is more easy to cave in. So proceed with caution. You can see that's holding that shape better, and I just, smudge that back and smooth it out. Okay? Now when you're attaching to these small pieces, and again, this is just more of a slight review than anything else, always score and slip. So I'm going to add a little tail. Clay, water, mush, roll. Tail. You can make it thinner on one side if you like it to go to more like a tapered edge. So I'm just kind of crawling it down. All right. So if I want a tail to come up on this. Now, anything that's going to stick off of these, like the horns of the unicorn or the mane at the bottom, you want to make sure that you do those things last. If you do them ahead of time and I have to wrap it in a bag, it'll probably break off. You can see this mouse tail. I'm going to do something similar with mine. It's not actually sticking off the body. They did it so it is still on there, but it's not sticking off. So this tail is going to be really tiny in comparison to the body, so don't worry about proportions here. Again, scoring both parts of where I know it's going to attach. Making my slip. I'm going to apply it with this. Actually, tail will go down. So I'm going to attach it like that. Blend in this top. Making sure you're making it, neat looking. You don't want to just smudge the crap out of it. All right. You can use a paintbrush with water to kind of get in these areas that need a little more attention. Now, if I wanted to kind of curve this, because my clay is soft, I can do that. So maybe I want it to kind of come up the back a little. All right. And then maybe instead of fully attaching it down, you could do something like that where it sticks off. So it's starting to look more like a pig, but that's okay. Anywhere you've just attached this here, you want to kind of pull it back out and add some score marks and slip. It doesn't have to be a lot. But when this dries, it's going to want to pull off the project itself. You can also, guys, with that little bit of clay, you can add just water and use a brush like that. Stick that on, give it a wiggle. You're going to use your carving tool to make sure we're blending around these edges. We're not getting rid of the design, but we are getting it so it's sealed. And then I would use my paintbrush to neaten it up. You can see how that can look really smooth. And like I was saying before, a lot of people like doing pigs for this project. One of the most main characteristics of a pig is its swirly tail. You would make this the same way. Kind of looks like a poop emoji, but it does work for a pigtail. Okay? So at this point, if I want to add a head, I need to make sure that I cut a hole wherever that head's going to be. The reason for that is when I'm going to attach a head that's hollow, all these forms need to be hollow. They cannot be solid because they have to hold something. So I'm going to, wedge my clay, make a small pinch pot, and that pinch pot's going to be attached facing downward. So this little itty bitty pinch pot here. Now imagine I score mark, slip on one, and I would attach it like this. Making sure I would blend it in. You do not necessarily need a coil on this. If you notice there's really not enough material to blend it in, or it's kind of fallen off, you can add a thin coil around the outside. But we want to make sure that's really blended in on there. Again, I would have taken my time to make this neater. You can see I'm bringing my finger around it to kind of bring back that indent. Okay? Now, a pig's head would probably be a little closer to the front of the body, not the top. Cat's head would be up higher. Dog's would be higher, and you would add like a little snout. The snout can be solid. It's just a cylinder with a dent on the end that you would score and slip and blend in. So that's a basic form. I'm going to review how to make the holes in these another time, but just know that you cannot let it dry before we add all the holes and stuff. Okay? All right, so that's making a smaller double pinch form. We're going to end up probably using our kebab sticks to poke our holes in. We might try and get something thinner because that's a bit of a big hole unless you really like seasoning your stuff. So we'll figure that out. We might not poke it through all the way. Maybe we'll just do the end of it as long as it goes all the way through. If it doesn't, you see if you can find something at home to poke through that. The way that we're going to be able to see if these go through is after we add the hole on the bottom here. And again, I am going to review this part. Once you add the hole, you can hold this up to the light and see if you can see the holes through it. See it? That way you know it went all the way through. Okay, guys. That's making your small little salt and pepper shaker. I want you guys to let me know if you have any questions.